Everyone believes medieval armor was crushingly heavy. Popular history tells you a knight needed a crane to mount a horse, that once he fell he was helpless, trapped inside hundreds of pounds of steel. You've seen it reinforced endlessly, armored figures clanking like walking tanks, collapsing under their own weight, moving slowly, laboring for every step. The image feels intuitive. Steel is heavy. More protection must mean more mass. More mass must mean less movement. And because modern soldiers carry heavy loads, it feels obvious that medieval armor would be worse. Thicker. Clumsier. Brutal on the body. But medieval combat didn't work that way. Picture yourself preparing for battle in the late 14th century. You are not donning scrap metal. You are wearing a carefully engineered system. Plate armor is not a single shell. It is articulated steel, shaped to the body, suspended from the hips and shoulders, distributed across your frame. A full harness of plate weighs roughly 45 to 55 pounds. Sometimes less. That is comparable to modern infantry gear. But unlike a backpack, that weight is not hanging from one point. It is wrapped around you. Balanced. Shared by the skeleton. The steel itself is thinner than most people imagine, often between 1 and 2 millimeters. Hardened. Curved. Designed to deflect, not absorb force. Underneath, you wear padding that spreads impact across muscle and bone. Now consider the battlefield. Combat is not a single heroic duel. It is minutes, sometimes hours, of movement. Advancing. Retreating. Turning. Bracing. Fatigue kills as surely as a blade. An armored fighter who cannot breathe, pivot, or recover is already dead. This is why armor weight mattered. Not for comfort. For survival. And this is where the mechanical conflict begins. You step forward in armor, and the first myth collapses immediately. You can walk. You can jog. You can sprint in short bursts. Because the armor moves with you. Plates slide over one another. Lames flex at the waist. Greaves rotate at the ankle. Now a sword strikes your chest. You hear it before you feel it. A sharp crack of steel on steel. The blade does not bite. It skids. The curve of the breastplate turns the edge away, redirecting force across the surface. Because the plate is hardened, the edge deforms before the armor does. Because the force is spread, your body absorbs less shock than you expect. This is the first truth: armor does not need to be thick if it can deflect. A heavier plate would slow you. It would cost endurance. And endurance is everything. A fighter who tires loses posture, loses awareness, loses the fight. Now a mace swings toward your shoulder. This is different. The head does not cut. It concentrates force. But even here, the armor works as a system. The pauldron spreads the blow. Padding compresses. Your shoulder takes a jolt, not a break. Because the armor is light enough to stay aligned on your body, it does not twist you off balance. You recover. You keep moving. Think about what that means. If armor were truly crushing, every impact would become catastrophic, not because of the enemy, but because of inertia. Excess mass would multiply force against your own joints. Instead, medieval armor is tuned to human biomechanics. It protects without overpowering the body inside it. Now watch what happens when you fall. You hit the ground hard. But you are not trapped. You roll. You plant a knee. You stand. Historical demonstrations prove this again and again. Knights performing cartwheels, rolls, sprints, because the armor is built for it. This is the moment the myth completely collapses. The knight is not a walking tank. He is a mobile weapons platform. And because he is mobile, weapons have to adapt. Swords stop targeting broad surfaces. They thrust. They hunt gaps. They half-sword, gripping the blade to drive the point into armpits, visors, joints. Blunt weapons aim not to crush armor, but to disrupt balance, to create openings. Armor that is too heavy would fail here, not by being pierced, but by exhausting its wearer. If you find this kind of myth-free medieval history as fascinating as we do, consider subscribing. Arms and Impact exists to explain how weapons and armor really worked, not how movies portray them. Now listen closely. Hear the rasp of breath inside a helmet. The scrape of steel as plates shift. The thud of boots on churned earth. This is not slow combat. This is violent, fast, technical movement. And only light, well-distributed armor survives it. What this forced fighters to do was rethink protection entirely. The goal was never maximum thickness. It was optimal efficiency. Armor's refined shapes. Curves grew more pronounced. Fluting added strength without weight. Coverage increased while mass stayed nearly constant. The real solution wasn't more force, it was smarter use of materials. Weapons responded accordingly. The rise of polearms exploited leverage. Daggers specialized in gap penetration. Swords became narrower, stiffer, designed for control rather than chopping power. And tactics changed. Grappling became essential. Knocking an armored opponent down mattered only if you could act before he recovered, because he would recover. Armor, weapons, and technique evolved together, locked in a mechanical conversation driven by the limits of the human body. So return to the myth. The idea of the immobile knight persists because it looks dramatic. Because heavy armor feels logical. Because we confuse mass with protection. The real historical truth is simpler, and more impressive. Medieval armor was light because it had to be. It was shaped, balanced, and engineered to preserve mobility, endurance, and control. Not despite combat, but because of it. Understanding this matters because it reminds you that medieval warfare was not crude. It was precise. Analytical. Grounded in physics and anatomy. At arms and impact, that is the story we tell. Not legends. Mechanics. If this changed how you see medieval weapons, hit like. Subscribe for more evidence-based history of arms, armor, and impact. Comment below, what weapon or myth should we break next? Because once you understand how armor really worked, you'll never see the Middle Ages the same way again.